Ah, okay. A couple of things before we begin. Again, the presenter has invited us if we have questions as we move along the discussion. You just would have to raise your hand so that we can call you and you can unmute yourself and ask your question. You want to be as direct. We only have hour and 15 minutes or hours 30 minutes. You want to get your question down good. But she invites that because she says it draws the story forward. Or you can wait till the end. There's a Q&A section that you can ask your question there, either through the chat, or you can do your video and unmute yourselves. Anything else? And then at the end, if there's certain things you would like to continue the conversation on, then she'll provide her contact so that we can keep this conversation going, guys. This is not a one-time hit. We've been telling stories since the beginning of time, and for some reason we're telling stories, but not the deep ones. And we got to make opportunity to do that. So she's invited. She'll be providing us with ways of contacting her. Okay, so let me begin. I have a clicker. Okay, so I can keep my glasses off and I can just do this. Yeah, the weather in Hilo is like. Okay. Anyway, this is Mōkaulele. Mōkaulele, and it's a program to grow Indigenous leadership. It's simple, to grow Indigenous leadership. And we use the arts, we use all the different kinds of arts, hula, fashion wear, all the different kinds of material arts, ritual arts. We use arts because art is the maunu, yeah, the bait that pulls us, that gets us into a conversation. But really, this is not about talking about the art solely. It's about the story behind the artist. Too often we get attracted to the material art, and this is an opportunity to hear our own story, perhaps through the story of the artist. So that's Mōkaulele, the flying hook, the hook that that will get you into a different space. And who am I? How is this? You will work right now. Let me. My clicker was working up until now. Oh, there it is. It just needed a warm up. My name is Tangaro, and for the record, I work for the University of Hawaii, and I work off of 2 campuses, and with some service to the alt campuses system-wide. And my honorable focus is really on the engagement of culture and protocols in the university system as a way of indigenizing the process, creating opportunities for universities in indigenous territories to achieve great things for our community. So that's what I do. The University of Hawaii, I want to put this in context, there's a strategic imperative, and that is to indigenize. Again, far too long, universities have not served very well or equitably indigenous communities. In fact, we have what they call underserved communities, communities that don't reflect at the same numbers within universities right in their territory. So in Hawaii, we call this initiative Hawaii Papo Keao, and it's this imperative, it's a strategic imperative, a measurable imperative to begin to indigenize how we service our communities, how well we know our communities, and how integrated we are in the communities, so that we are not just an institution to serve everyone else and not the members of our community. So it's a great time to be in the University of Hawaii. There's days when we achieve a lot and we feel really good about our work. And then there are some days that remind us that there's still a lot of work ahead of us to indigenize. So this conversation is part of building that capacity for leadership in and out of the university system for our communities. And yeah, we invite leaders worldwide to contribute to this movement, but we also want to give birth to the leaders in us and function in this world of ours. We use a framework to 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 help guide this conversation. And a framework is important because it allows us to relate in familiar in familiar terms. So Kanoelani will be sharing her story, but in this framework, but in the same framework, you can start beginning to look at your own stories, and you'd be surprised what you come out with when there is a shared framework. We can support each other's stories a whole lot more better when we're familiar with the framework that story is being delivered in. The framework has 5 little nodes to it: the hua, the ha'alele, the huakai, the ho'ina, and the ha'ina. Okay, so you'll find out what this is about in a few minutes. So with no further ado, I want to introduce Kanoelani Davis, and I'll let her tell us, first of all, of her hua, her beginnings, her conception, the things of her childhood. So Kanoelani, in Pidgin, who you, where you from, and what you doing in this world of ours?
Oh, first off, aloha mai kako, aloha. Oh, it's so beautiful to see so many familiar faces across the Pai'aina, across the Pacific, and even beyond. I saw a somebody from Germany in here. So aloha mai kako. My name is Kanoelani Davis. I come from the island of Molokai, and I greet you. O Molokai nui a hina, ku kulaiwi, o kamiloloa, ku aina, o makali'i, o ame pulo, ku pu'u, and o kalohi, kai. And I just wanted to greet you from the island of Molokai. And before I begin, it really helps me kind of ground myself. And I want to, aside from just introducing who I am, I want to introduce the island that I come from, the elements that are here, the things that have raised me, Molokai nui a hina in its greatness, as I introduce not only myself, but the island and the elements that surround me. Ho ili ho ka boa ina la ila I a ho I kai a o ka loi alohi ka lama ka hi na puka na I ka ike a ka ubo ina na lua ka na loa ho aia ka noe I ka mako e o la mako I na wahine a ki na ui ka ana aloha mai aloha mai aloha mai kako.
Aloha nui.
So you asked me about my hua. Mahalo. I really appreciate this framework in which you guide our ka'au, and as it keeps us on this path. It's always weird to kind of talk about myself in this way, and so as I share, I want to first recognize and address and bring to awareness and consciousness that as I share from my kupuna. I share on my behalf. I am Kanoelani Davis. I come from the line of the Koa Ohana here on Molokai, generations on my grandmother's side, and also from the Hilina'i side on my grandfather's side, all the way to Ka'u. So I bring with you for 4,000 voices and generations that was instilled in me, whether consciously or subconsciously in my dreams or even by breath. And so the hua starts right there. It starts before my presence into this world. And I wouldn't be here had there not been my kupuna. Period, bottom line. And I was raised by my grandparents. My parents had a divorce when I was very, very young. And so being raised by grandparents, if any of you folks have been raised by grandparents or from that generation before this this prior generation, then you understand there was a different set of rules and a different way of being back then. It wasn't, at least in my experience, it wasn't, you know, it was very strict. We had a lot of boundaries and we had to stay in those boundaries. And so the story begins with a young girl being raised by her grandparents and not understanding who she was because she at first thought she was left behind, right? As a child of divorce, I felt I was left behind, not realizing the gift that it was to me. And that didn't happen till later. And being raised by grandparents, I got the projection of what it was being from that generation, right? That's the generation that all wanted to be Americans. It's the generation that couldn't continue their language. That was the generation that was still, they were transforming themselves out from their lowly status of being brown in this community and looking forward to a status of being more, what's the word? American. And so I lived in the world of, you need to be more American, but I also lived in the world, a very hidden world. Now I recognize it was a very hidden world of culture. And when I say that, it was because it literally, I thought everybody knew these things. I thought everybody knew what we were doing. And it wasn't until recently I recognized not everybody knew. And that was the most heartbreaking thing in my life, because I thought this was the normal world. And you might relate to that story. You might have stories that were given and passed down to you that you just thought everybody knew. It was normal. Not realizing that you had a gift. You were given a gift. And that was the catalyst. In my home, I had two grandparents, both Chinese Hawaiian. One who just did not want, she did not like, my grandmother who was Hawaiian Chinese. I love you, grandma. If you're listening to this now, I'm so sorry, but this is for real. And this is gonna be the legacy to hopefully shape and cure our future. But I had a grandmother, I love her dearly, the most giving woman, strict, short little lady with fire. But she didn't like Hawaiians. She's also Chinese, didn't like Chinese. I'm part Filipino, didn't like Filipinos. She didn't like all the races in the world. She just wanted to be Japanese. That's where she wanted, you know? And then I had a grandfather, Hawaiian Chinese, who he was proud to be who he was. He was also in the military. He was in the Marines. He fought in the Korean War. He fought in all the wars. And so he would go in and out of these things where he would be, I'm fully Hawaiian. We stand by it. We have our culture. Here's our spirituality. Here's our practices. And then maybe sometimes as he got older, I noticed he would switch back. No, we're American. We do not do Hawaiian things. I mean, talk about confusion. But that's the battle these kupuna had to have and face within themselves. What I recognize is that is still the battle we have today. And I had shared this decolonizing the mindset of our current nature at a micro level, at a self level. This is restoring justice to who we are. And that's where it started. Not knowing who you were, but feeling really strong about who you was. Two totally different things. And I didn't know that. It was what one would accept you as and what you accept yourself as. And they could be conflicting. So having been raised by my grandparents, I was instilled a lot of culture. My grandfather taught me, I honor him. My grandfather had just passed recently. very recently. And you know, sorry if I start to tear up, but the grandfather was a sifu. If you know what a sifu is, that is a teacher in the martial arts, in Chinese martial arts, specifically in Kung Fu, Tai Chi, Qigong. They come from a line of martial artists on the Chinese side. On the Hawaiian side, he was also an olohe and a kahupono. And he learned lua, la'au lapa'au, lomi lomi, la'au kahea, and so many other things. And so I was raised in this world from the age of 2. And again, it was normalized. Everything that we learned was normalized. What he taught to society and the community took out the spirituality, and it was form. Form. It was how you defend, how you fix what you can hurt. You should be able to heal. You are responsible. That's the kahupono part. But what he taught to me behind closed doors was the essence. Some may call it spirituality. Some may call it Hawaiian religion. Some may call it heebie-jeebies. That's what my grandmother called it, heebie-jeebies. But it was the essence. It was the mana behind all of it. Because we can move in every way, shape, or form, but if we don't have that essence, it lacks the power, the mana. And so he taught me this from a very young age, and that was a huge catalyst. So it was martial arts. And then on the other hand, I was hula. And so from the age of 2, I was already in hula. So growing up, I did martial arts and hula all my life. So I got to learn the striking like fire and the moving like water. And that's how they kept me in balance.
So you speak to the essence. And I think this is an important feature in Ka'au when we're looking at how do we mythologize how we think about the way we live. So how do we mythologize it? And mythology is not, I'm talking the original mythology, the original documents, the original resources for self-development, the development of self, the development of self in family, in community, in the larger Lahui landscape. But for many of us, we inherit the form. Yeah, so we can dance, we go hula, we dance all the motions, we can dance front row, we can chant, all of the, we can do all the forms. But then, and for many of us, that's perfect. There is a luxury in learning form, because once the essence is introduced into the form, and not everyone, in my experience, there are more people that are comfortable doing the form of culture. The essence is always a difficult thing to achieve, because one of them is there's an accountability to the essence. So it's interesting that in my world of being reared here, it was easy to transport the form, but there's always 1 or 2 people, whether it's fishing, farming, hula, lua, weaving, you can teach the form, but there's always going to be 1 or 2 of that mo'opuna in that room that the old people will have an inclination to begin to explore the giving of the essence. And so we have, a number of people, they still contact us, they tell us, can you teach us Ava? We said, but you've been doing Ava for years. And it took my wife and I, Kikui, a while to understand what were they asking for, because they're practitioners of Ava. Well, it's exactly as you say. They've inherited the form. They know all the movements and they respect it and they've met it. And now there's something, they realize there's something else. And they sometimes they look for people in the community to help provide that. So, this is a good time to be looking, at your hua. And, I started to laugh at your grandmother's character, but it's so real. you know um it's so real. And but there's another thing that you talked about, your grandfather's ability to go in between character, in between value systems. And it's like that kino lao that we have of our deity. They don't have only one form, they take many forms, so you can find them everywhere and anywhere. So and so that's the beauty of it. The other thing you brought up is the ability to see oneself, because in this world of ours, when we're you know the form is big here. And the essence, you can get whole degrees on form, academic degrees just on memorizing form, and you can totally miss the whole essence of it. Yeah, that's how sometimes knowledge work here. And but you know we've inherited, you can get degrees on memorizing mythology, world mythology. In fact, you can have a degree in mythology. In Hawaii, we have beautiful stories of Pele and Hi'iaka, and if you can retell the story, dance, and chant the story, you are a valuable contributor to family knowledge, regional knowledge, to the knowledge of Hawaii, the lahui, Hawaii, the place. You're valued. But what we stop asking, what we don't see sometimes, and this is bringing it forward, we don't realize that a lot of those mythologies are about self-development. So Hi'iaka is sent out on a journey on her own, and then she's given companions, but the companions are only reflections of herself. We look at any myth, they all, especially the journey myths, it's always about going out on their own, the self-development. You're going into foreign territory, and you have to do whatever you have to have that ability to call up the energy to deal with life and death. And so I think that's one of the things that when we're dealing with people identifying their own stories again, they're so willing to talk about the story of someone else, their neighbor, their mother, and that's all good because they're all informative. But at the end of the day, what is your story? How is your story going to encourage and inspire the generations like Hi'iaka? Till today, she still inspires us. We think we know her, and then we mature in a few months, and before you know it, we got to know her again. There's another element of her that relates largely with our maturity. So, family, as we're listening to Kanoe's story, begin to ask your question, geez, what is my hua? Oh, is it similar? Is it different? Have I inherited form? Lucky if you inherited form, because some of our people inherited, if they inherited anything, it's so deep, they have to spend many years digging it up, and mining it up, bringing it up again. So we want to, think of your hua, think of the quality of your rearing. And again, we're using Hawaiian language and Hawaiian spaces to communicate, but this journey myth is worldwide. So if you're from Europe, you can relate to this. If you're from Japan, you can relate to this. But we're speaking it from the dialect of Hawaii because that's who we are. That's where we are from. Noel, we have a third person to this presentation. His name is Noel Wu. Noel, can you share with us some photo? Just bring it up. It's one of Kanoelani's photos, and we'll see where this photo take her. Okay, Kanoelani, tell us about this photo. Just go for it.
Wow. First off, looking for these photos were really hard, and I wanted to find something, and I went through it and got lost. So mahalo for bringing this. This is my papa. This is the Sifu Kaupono Olohe Francis Clifford de Aloha Wong, raised in Papukolea, where the Wong, the Kai'a Wong, Ohana all come from, mama and grandmama from Ka'u. And my grandfather, we only learned one style of meakaua, Hawaiian weapons, in Lua. And it's that long staff that's leaning on his body. And we call that kui. Interestingly enough, we talk about identity, and let me express to you identity and hua, even ha'alele. Growing up, my only teacher was my grandfather when it came to the alua, or Hawaiian martial arts, and we only had one meakaua. And so I didn't know of the other meakaua. I knew they existed. And there was a point in my life where when I went out into the world and I was growing up and I met other Olohe and other Lua practitioners, my life was like, wow, there's other people. Let's practice. Like, what do you know? Let's go. Like, you know, just like, I want to learn. Like, you know, and seeing all the meakaua, the shark's teeth, the Hawaiian native woods, and wow, you guys have so many weapons. And the Olohe at those times, in those days, invalidated my grandfather's teachings, invalidated the kui as being any weapon in the system. 2 years I went into depression. 2 years I questioned my grandfather's teachings. 2 years I was like, what did I learn all these years? Did he just make it up? Is this real? 2 years. 2 years. And I questioned my grandfather. When I was in my early 30s. And then one day I woke up and I went, wait a moment. How dare anybody question my line? How dare I even question my grandfather? How dare I question his grandfather and his grandfather and his grandfather? How dare I? And I stuck very strongly to my teachings, very strongly to what was gifted to me, very strongly to who I was, but I was open to learning more. And so as the years went by, now I'm in my late 30s over here, and I started to get more into woodwork. My grandfather would give me I would wake up from dreams, and my grandfather would give me tasks. Because I'm sorry, I take that back. I would wake up from dreams, and the kupuna would show me a finished something, whether it be a hinai, kapa, kaula, puniu, meakaua. They would just show me in these dreams, and I would wake up and go, okay, how the heck am I supposed to do this? So I would go to him and I would ask him, Papa, this is what came up in my dream. Here, I draw it out. I'm supposed to do this. He goes, okay, you do this, 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 and this, and this. And then when you pau, you show me. It wasn't makahana kaike. It was listen to my words, follow the instructions, receive, and go do. And that's how he shaped me. So in this photo, I had just started meakaua. I had a piece of kauila from Kauai. And I'm over there on the side, hand sanding, because I never have tools back then. All my tools were my hands, chisels. I mean, I never have the grinder and, you know, the sander, da-da-da-da-da. Mind you, I love all of it. Once I learned what that was, I will not steer away from that, but I'm happy that I did it the old way. Stone to wood, like to do it the old way. Didn't know these tools, the other tools existed. And he did that purposely. Mm-hmm. And so here he's showing me, he goes, no, you gotta go, and this is how you do it. This is how you grind it. This is how you shape it. And that was my first niho mano. And so every time I would finish a section like this, yeah, you know what, give me that, like this. Go do it. Come back when you pau. Okay, that's how I learned. That's exactly how I learned. I learned through dreams, whether it was his kupuna, my grandmother's kupuna, and then I would bring it to fruition. If you walk into my house, people would tell you, my house looks like a museum. but all those things I made were from dreams.
Mm.
And this is essence.
Yeah.
And it wasn't about making the meakawa. It was about the sharing of breath and the
Oh, yeah.
stories that came with it.
So you talk about giving, you know, your house is a reflection of all your dreams. You know, we call that ho'okikino ikamoimoya, to give the dream form.
Mm.
And, you know, and I learned that early on that all dreams want some kind of form. And that's why it's a great thing for hula people because, you know, we have a dream and we can immediately put it to form, whether it's voice, motion, we could put it to costume, into lays. They want some kind of form. And sometimes even just to talk story about, we don't know what to do with the dream we receive. Oh, just the sharing of it. We name our children sometimes because the name comes in dreams. So, you know, dreams want form, some kind of form. And I remember when I first started dancing with the Halau Kekui, and you know, we have to wear kupe'es, yeah? And you know, I come from the land of pipipi. I never know where I'm from. Ko'olau Poko had kupe'es because we only ate pipipi. But you know, as a kid, we moved to Hilo, going to Halau Kekui, and the seniors, and I see at least one senior member here. When I was a kid, she was my mama there. And, you know, they help the young ones because we got to make coupe. So sometimes we got to go nighttime, we got to go camping, halape. No, you just don't go to the beach. You got to hike and then you got to eat them. And there's sometimes what we call the coupe overload when you're eating coupe is for like months and you know, like, whoa. But when we first made it, we had to make pukai in it. And this photo and your story behind the photo is just reminding me that oftentimes, well, sometimes they give you a bag of coupes, and you're so fortunate when a senior person loves you so much, they give you a bag of coupes. And if you get a gallon bag of coupes, you know they love you plenty. That's how you could measure how well they love you, by the size of coupes they give. And if they never give you nothing, maybe they still needed time to develop a relationship. Go to the beach at nighttime. But they give you one rock, and you stay there for days at the beach, and you go back and forth, and you got to use 100 plus in that, you know, for the beginners. And you go to, and I remember third, fourth, fifth year into doing coupe, because as you elevate in halal, you add more coupes. My uncle was a mechanic, and he had a grinder, and I used to see that grinder in his shop. And I wonder if I'm gonna get punished if I don't go to Rockaway, you know. And so I did like 5, and I waited for the gods to punish me, but they didn't happen. So I just did the rest with the grinder. But I never forget the fact that my early days, when they gave you the bag of coupees and a stone, that made me appreciate and you know, appreciate the journey. Um, any of you have a question related, you know, relating to this? Focus on the hua. Any of you out there might have a question that you would like to ask her, or you can put it in the chat if you want.
Or maybe even a similar story.
Or a similar story.
No shame.
Yeah. I told you our people. In an environment like this, sometimes they're like, oh,
Yeah.
you know, and sometimes it's cultural.
Yeah.
Because you know, nowadays, you do have somebody that,
Yes, Mahina's raising her hand.
Mahina here, o Mahina here, ke ia?
Hi, Mahina Gronkhurst.
Oh, Mahina, what is your question?
Hi.
Yeah, aloha.
Well, no, it's just when I was listening to her story, you know, like my grandmother, I was raised by her. She was born in 1887, but those same dynamics in family, you know, like my mother's generation, you know, they knew all these stories and then they go to school and the school tells them, oh, you know, you guys just hakuvali, these are not true. But that seed was planted and, you know, there are people, whether through dreams or different mo'olelo, that keep that alive. And I was so wonderful to hear your story because I think it's those dreams that remind us of where those who are and who houses them. So I really appreciated your story, that it is a shared Hawaiian experience that we have. And it's not just, you know, kind of holding on to a past and wishing, you know, you knew that, but actually having your kupuna, you know, give you this kuleana for you to uphold and to continue that ka'au or mo'olelo. But so I just wanted to say mahalo nui.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. Yeah, you know, when you go to school, they don't, the story that we have to learn are not the story that reflect our community. We're learning somebody else's stories, you know, and when in the 60s, we had to learn stories from the East Coast, you know, that was a curriculum was about. And so nobody asked us what our stories were or the stories of our family. And in
Well,
fact, my
Can I just make one more quick
yeah,
comment?
sure.
I was thinking of, which breaks my heart, you know, they were brainwashed, especially when they went to the military. They knew all these stories, but when they went out of, I mean, they knew the truth. They, like I was told when I went out the house that Hawaiian language didn't exist anymore. I was raised where I heard Hawaiian every single solitary day in my grandmother's generation. But unfortunately, so many of our men went to the military and
Mm.
they were just whittled, you know. So when you told me about your grandfather, that in and out, it was so, you know, really needs a healing, and you know the truth will, you know, set us or help us. But mahalo for that.
Yeah, I want to share that moment. That's why I talked about decolonizing the mindset within ourselves. You know, we talk about this grander scale of decolonization through the Lahui and through indigenous people, but there is a part of us, we cannot do it we cannot do the larger work without doing the inner work, because we cannot break a system if we mentally are still within the system. And you know, with my papa, it was interesting because it wasn't until he was older and had to go back to the VA. And in order to get your VA, if you guys folks know, in order to get your VA benefits, you have to go see a psychiatrist and you have to go see their doctors, because that's part of receiving, like, I guess they have a scale, like how much you need, how much you deserve, and how much, which that's a whole nother, I don't even want to go, but so you have to go to, so what I recognize is every single time he came out of the psychiatrist's office, he was very American, very, and Hawaiian didn't exist. And that's where I was confused. But if I sat with him long enough to talk story and like, hey, Papa, you know, this came up, or I have this, or, you know, talk to me about tutu, like, then it starts to slowly creep back in. And it was almost like, if we're talking about brainwashing, we was on battles brainwashing. If anything, I was brainwashing him back to his pico, and they was brainwashing him back to that pico. And it was like, who's right, who's wrong? And this poor man having to be in the middle, not knowing what is right and is wrong. And I say that not only for him, but I also can say that for myself. As he passed, I got his kui. Again, the kui, just really quickly, a kui, that weapon could be used, it was as small as a toothpick to as large as a staff. The kui was meant to pierce, and it pierces certain aspects of the body. That's the short version. And so his kui came to me, and it was made of kauila. And on top of the kauila was a brass ball with the Marine Corps on it. So, you know, interesting how he integrated the two. He didn't leave. He didn't leave. But he also was like, I fought my battles. I am who I am. That's good enough. And that was the biggest reminder in you can know who you are and travel within realms and still know where you're supposed to go back to. That might have been the huakai.
It may have been his huakai, yeah. So, you know, and the thing is, and what she's already saying, and you already know that, you know, stories interface with stories. People's journey stories interface with people's journey stories. So if I'm looking at this Zoom world that we're in right now, all of our stories are being triggered by what is being said, or maybe what is not being said. And you know, and it's making us ask questions. And it's different when we're learning a story from a book versus when we're sharing stories. You know, just by being in the sacred space of someone sharing their story, that's a sacred space because it's getting into your brain and it's getting into your memories. You're going to start smelling things. You're going to start hearing things. You're going to start feeling things, tasting things, and they all contribute to the memory of a moment. Now, I want to get into where is this one here? Did it go? There it is. Oh, okay. I think my clicker goes to sleep. But the ha'alele. So we have the hua, yeah, the formative years, and all of it, Now the ha'alele is the piece where you begin to identify who you are. In everyone's hua, we begin learning of our place in the family, in the community, in the house, how to act in the house, how to act out of the house, how to act in other people's house. That's the hua. Now the ha'alele is the piece when you begin to realize that you become aware of a calling. There's a special voice that you need to attend to. And ha'alele, the word ha'alele means to take flight, to launch, like ha'alele kawa, the canoe took launched and went. So the ha'alele is becoming very active. And so at what point in your life did you realize that if you're going to truly live, not just in form, but in essence, what did you have to do to launch that journey? Because we can stay hua all of our life. We can never go, psychologically, we don't have to mature. But now you're gonna, we have a Pele story because Pele left Kahiki to Hawaii. We have a Hi'iaka story because she left Ha'ena on our island to Ha'ena on Kauai and came back successful. They all launched. So what was your launch and where were you launching into? Please.
Woo. These really invoke questions, and I hope we all can. I hope you all are out there are using these same formats to launch your small little tool. I'm glad you asked that. I had to go back into my archives, my mental archives, and so what I've recognized, I went on several. There were several points. If I was to pinpoint it, there were several points, not just one point. There had been several points. And the first one was the moment I had my daughter, she saved my life. And I say that because I was sleeping. I got kicked out when I was 16. I moved from when I was 8th grade. I was passed from island to island. I'm Molokai back and forth, Kauai, Oahu. I felt unwanted. I may have been a handful for my grandparents. My grandmother was an alpha female. I mean, I had the attitude of my grandmother. So it was like, you or me. She was like, well, be me. So you got to go over there. And that was my life. And it felt very, I lost a lot of validation. I talk about abandonment issues. Oh, we can go on. But it also put me in spaces where I had to live in a survival mode because I was back and forth. By the time I was 17, I was living in New Mexico, Albuquerque, New Mexico. I was a senior in high school. I was by myself. I took a Greyhound bus from California after visiting my mother in the summer because my father wouldn't give me a ticket home to Hawaii. So, and my mother's husband hit me, and I was a little bit cocky back then with my martial arts skills, so I hit him back. And TRO in the middle of California. And I can tell this story now. I couldn't tell this story back for a very long time. But which ended up me catching the Greyhound bus because I was a stubborn going person. Took the Greyhound bus all the way down to Albuquerque, New Mexico, put myself in school, stayed down there. I did very, very stupid things to get by. Use your imagination, whether it was very much illegal things, whatever I needed to get by. And I moved to an area where it was mainly Hispanics, Mexicans, and Black people, African Americans. And so there was always rivals. It was a really bad part of town. And so I had to fight and prove myself because I didn't want to get picked on. I was a skinny little Filipino girl, but what I had behind my back pocket was being Hawaiian. Go figure. Nobody like touched me because I'm Hawaiian. But then I also had to fight, like literally fight, to make sure that nobody bothered me. It's like a movie. And that was my life. Ended up in San Jose, California. After I graduated from 29 Palms, I was only there for 3 months. Graduated there, and the family that I was staying with was like, you know what, you gotta go. Like, okay, thank you. Went up to San Jose and worked 2 jobs. Had a house. I rented a room. Experienced a lot of things out there. Slept on church benches. Witnessed shootings. Was in the middle of a raid, an actual raid, the kind you see the SWAT team on TV breaking. Yeah, the helicopter light in my bedroom on my bed looking at me while the SWAT team is coming through the house. And I was just this young girl from Molokai who was like, what the heck is going on? I just happened to be in the wrong house. The wrong house. And so I had to experience that and witness that. And I didn't know that. I just rented a room from this people back on the street before I came home. And it was being hapai with my oldest daughter. That was the first moment, the first catalyst into which I needed to change my life. And it changed. And once I cold turkey all of that, and it was with my being hapai and in a relationship and getting married, my whole entire life changed. It was about family. It was all the things I yearned for. So I also want to point out in the hua, my grandparents, I'm the oldest daughter. So my brother had cleft lip growing up. So they trained me hard in martial arts to fight because my job was to protect. I was trained to protect. Mind you, in the mindset of Western mindset, the male is a protector provider, the female is the nurturer. In my house, it wasn't. And so I was trained to protect. And so I had this fight in me, in this pool. And so having my daughter in me, I recognize I needed to make, she is my kuleana. You know, we talk about hiaka ikupole o Pele, you know, and Pele taking hiaka and bringing her with her as she traveled. Like, that was me. That was my hiaka ikupole, and she saved my life. And that was the first time in the world I understood the word Ke aloha pau'ole. Ke aloha pau'ole. And I recognize I will never put my children through this. I have to love myself unconditionally. I have to love her.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
And so yeah, that was the first time.
Yeah. So when we look at the ha'alele of Pele and Hi'iaka as a model, there's a chant that says, that Pele was journeying with her family into a land that she was unaware of. And and so the fear that comes into that, and so the fear, the isolation, the abandonment, the self, the depression, that's if we understand that from the larger context, then we know that we're not so isolated in this journey of life, that there are many people that go through this, and maybe we can begin supporting each other in these areas, supporting each other's stories, instead of putting each other down because somebody has a story, but really putting each other up because they have a story. And let's help them in that direction. Now, so that ha'alele was a physical ha'alele, and interestingly, you were looking at the end of the day, you're a hapai, and it led you into a family that you're yearning for. So you had your ha'alele was kind of brutal, and it's not those cute little Hansel and Gretel kind of ha'alele. You was life and death kind of ha'alele. Your huaka'i, so now you had your hua for all of its advancements and setbacks, all of its the hua that gave you strength, but also planted some seeds of weakness and self-doubt. That it came, it comes, when you have ava, it is bitter sometimes, and then you have your ha'alele, how your hua, you maximize your hua world, and then they sent you out. Okay, you just got to get, you've outgrown this space. We can't deal with you anymore. And you went literally left, and you went to a foreign place, and you journeyed through. And as a result, you began a family, and you've experienced the family. Now, you did say something about loving oneself, not that no matter what we do for community. And it's interesting, in our world, we put so much value on the service to others that sometimes we forget that to service others requires that we also include ourselves in that formula. So a mother that lactates and feed all of her babies, if that mother is not taking care of herself and not giving her the nourishment, then what she's able to do for her offspring is limited. Then this is where many of our people have a difficult time, because there's a guilt attached to self-development. Yeah, but when we look at our mythology, all of our mythology was about developing oneself to the fullness, but it also is about bringing that self back into the community and integrating fully into that community. So can you speak to us about the journey, some of your advances where loving yourself and doing what you had to do to be that kind of mother you had to be? What was that like? And some of those moments when it was just really difficult and you question if this journey was really, you want to get off the canoe. This canoe is just too rough. I want to get off this canoe. I'd rather go live on somebody else's canoe than journey on my own. I'd rather spend my life complaining about somebody else's canoe than actually being a master of my own. Can you share with us a little bit of your huaka'i? Well,
Yeah, the I'm laughing because it's like, yeah, every day I want to just jump off my canoe. Like I it's like, how about I just build 5 canoes and then I can just jump on whatever canoe I want to jump on because they're all mine, going into the huaka'i, I first want to recognize in the time of the ha'alele, there were, I want to share something you had shared in one of your advertisements, your marketing recently. You did a live and you said something, reclaiming our dreams, and you even repeated that here. And this was the part where it was creating my own identity, losing my identity, and then slowly exposing my honest and true self. That created ripples and shifts both internally and externally. And those ripples and shifts, those exposing of who I truly am, doesn't necessarily fit within the confines of our society, of our community, and our family. And I come from Mōkaulele, y'all. Like, this was a small island. Your neighbors know everything about you. They know when you shower, they know everything, or they think they know. Okay. So, and it's fine. You learn to just kind of go, that's not mine. I know my truth. I'm good. But I aloha you anyway. You learn that. And so I also wanted to share. So thank you for sharing that. And then when you were talking of the Mōkaulele, in which we could draw inspiration from, because they do share a very human aspect of trials and tribulations. I want to put out in when I went to London Fashion Week in 2019, the collection that I had was called Elemental Consciousness. Because not only the mo'olelo, the elements also share their mo'olelo with us every day. And we have a rain here called Kukulunui Ahina. And Kukulunui Ahina starts at the easternmost point of Molokai at Kapu'upoi. And you know, that rain is a torrential rain, a very torrential rain. It's a pillar. Kukulunui Ahina. Kaua Kukulunui Ahina. It is a torrential rain. It's not this light, beautiful rain. But they say if it comes upon you when you're fishing, it happens upon you when you're farming, you'll be abundant. And so that was one of the first designs I created through PōMahina Designs, because I wanted people to understand, if you could handle this type of rain and survived it, guarantees you'll be abundant.
Beautiful.
You know, so the elements also, elemental consciousness, that was the name of the collection that I went and took to Fashion Week, and I wanted to share that.
Yeah, do we have any images of that, of the London week, or of just her fashion work?
Yes, hold on.
Can you pull one out and so she can, you know, and okay, so I really like that, because one of the things that it takes a lot for our students to come to college. It's for some of them it's like going to Albuquerque, the Albuquerque you described. It takes a lot, and the families don't follow them to the college. They don't know. Many of our students their families have never been in college. So, the idea, so one of the things that don't work for our students is, when it's a good day, yeah, they feel good about themselves. But soon as there's tribulations, trials, soon as there are challenges, then that's when many of them jump off the canoe and they don't make the first semester. And so the data shows us if they make the first semester and they succeed, the chances are they'll make the first year. And if they make the first year, then they can go with it. So part of it is not just supporting them and talking about the niceties of the journey, the academic journey, but preparing them for these torrential, it's part of living in Hilo, you have torrential rain. And, and if you can survive it, if you can survive the journey, you can survive the elemental experience, you're going to bring a lot of value back. In fact, when we look at our continental cousins, our indigenous American from, Mokuhonu, from the Turtle Island, many of their stories, their rites of passage takes them right into the desert. Oh, you face those elements. And if you come back, you're going to bring a lot of value to our community. So, it's we have it. And the thing is, don't always look for the Pollyanna moments, because sometimes it's those witches in the journey that's going to actually fortify us. It's, so here it is. There's a photo of, can you talk to us about this? What is this jargon doing to your mind?
Oh gosh. So this, mind you, 2019, we had families on Mauna Kea, and I left to London, and so this piece was it was named Haukea. I didn't name it after any particular akua like Poliahu or anybody, from Mauna Kea. I wanted to recognize the essence in which it gives. And so Haukea was this piece, and I wanted to do kikepa. I mean, that's who we are. I mean, this was our everyday wear. Sometimes we could made it fancy, and we had the ka'e, the lauhala, the kaula around the waistband, the leihulu. And kind of what I created as my signature was the pieces that are on their head. I do that in all my fashion shows, no matter where I was. So that was kind of the consistency of who I was. But I wanted to integrate the modern Maoli. And so I wanted to let us recognize that we can keep the essence of our people, of our kupuna, and we can absolutely modernize it. We could absolutely bring it to the forefront of who we are today, because we understand the form, we bring the essence. It doesn't take away from the integrity And it doesn't take away from who we are because we shifted a bit. And that's part of the huakai. That is absolutely a part of the huakai. And too many people judge. And this is where I want to share, like, the only judge is you. You know, I know we all say it, you know, you go home to yourself, you pay your own bill. We say that over and over to get us by. But there has to be a point in which we believe it.
Yeah.
We have to believe it. A Molokai girl makes it to London Fashion Week. When they called me and I was invited to New York first. And they called me and they said, oh, we would like to invite you to Fashion Week. I had to go, what the hell is Fashion Week? I had to go Google it. I was like, I don't know what is that. Oh, that's a big deal. Oh.
So you talked about. So you talked about so here's the form. Yeah, but the essence. So the essence remain. So it's reflected by that ongoing thing, that the headpiece that you have. No matter what you do, that's the ieve. That's the essence. That's the umbilical cord that keeps that mana going, no matter what form we're innovating in or for. And so as we Noel, can you share this? I want to make sure I'm on the right screen. I'm on this, I think my battery is dead, but in any case, over here. So we're in the ho'ina. So you've talked about this ho'ina where your whole journey, and you talk about essence and form. And sometimes they're contradicting, or sometimes people will trigger self-doubt. And then I'm sure you found some mentors in the community that had the ability to bring essence and form complementary. Even when they're conflicting, they were able to say, hey, it's supposed to conflict. And because they inform each other as we move forward. So you may have had those mentors. Now, how do you see what you do, your ho'ina, your journey, and you went to London, and you're taking all of the conflicts of your grandmother, your grandfather, their strong personalities, and also their injuries that affected their personalities. All that is in you. And then, you in this world, and, in Hawaii, we thrive on being accepted. But also we know that our journeys cannot always be accepted wholly. And oftentimes when people don't journey, they cannot support the journey stories of another. And that's why Pele, she sent Hi'iaka out there, because she's, the other people that came to Hawaii came on Pele's canoe, including Hi'iaka. But Pele was about sending this one younger sister out, says, no, you gotta now, you've lived long enough on my journey story. You need to launch your own journey story. And interestingly, Pele asked all the Hi'iakas, which one of you will go on this journey? And all of them said no, but this young one. So, sometimes people are okay with living on the journey of another. But you'll always have that one child that's gonna question, what's my journey? Where am I gonna go? Why am I here? They're not satisfied with just getting a job and paying the bills. They're questioning, why am I here? What's my voice? And in fact, some of you in this audience here might be that mo'opuna. Who am I? And always looking internally. So as a ho'ina, you talked about changing, innovating, keeping the trademark, the signature, it represents the essence, but then the form can change. And that's a great ho'ina. You can leave the youth, because there is sometimes in the indigenous world, especially one that's colonized, sometimes we spend so much energy just on keeping the form, grabbing the form, and inventorying the form. What do we have? And keep an attention on the form, that we end up with a room full of artifacts of forms and we don't know how to use them. And we become a slave to the form because we don't know how to innovate the essence forward. Now, as a ha'ina, and this is the ha'ina, and if you know Hawaiian music, go ha'ina ia mai na kapuana. That's the last verse, yeah. It's a great thing. It's part of our singing culture. But the ha'ina is important. You shared with us your story, Yahuwah Ha'alele, Yahuwah Ka'i, Yoho'ina, your contributions back to your community through yourself, through your journey. You did not take yourself out of that journey. That journey informed your contributions to community. The Ha'ina is really what the community remembers of us. What do you think? What do you hope your children going to remember of your journey? Hi'iaka's journey was so huge, as well as Pele's, that we have created huge cultural lifestyles anchored in that. In fact, the story of Hi'iaka and Pele are giving us some of the information we need to hold our sacred lands in place and intact. They were not just this cute little legend, they were highly informative. So that's the Ha'ina we have for them. What do you hope your Ha'ina will be for your descendants?
Every day after, actually, while she was still in me, that
You might be a little stuck over there. Your Wi-Fi might be a little challenged right now. Kanoelani. Maybe the Ha'ina is still developing. While we're waiting for her screen to defrost, you know, the Ha'ina piece, whenever I ask people to talk about their Ha'ina piece, they have a difficult time. Are you there, Kanoelani? Only because, typically they say, well, I don't want to be remembered for anything. I'm not doing this to be remembered. We got to rethink that, because if how many people we remember because they taught us how to make the best kulolo? They taught us to make the best haupia. They taught us how to aiha'a really, really well. They didn't do it to be remembered. To be remembered is an honor for doing what you've done for your community. That's the honor that is really, we don't want to miss out. The ability to share our story so that it can affect other people's stories. And if we stop telling our stories, how are our children going to remember to tell their stories? So are you there, Kanoe? Or you got? So this whole thing about recovering our stories, we have to, because if we don't recover them, who will? And if in our stories are all of our strengths and our fears, in our stories is our ability to connect to other people, mentors, mentees, students, teachers, people that love and help us, and people that don't love and challenge us. They're all important. They all play in this journey of ours. And so I'm not sure where Hanoi, Noya, you know where she went?
No, she's not in the room anymore.
Okay,
May
already.
I speak?
Yeah, who are you?
Aloha, this is Kailianu Michaels.
Hi, aloha.
Aloha. I just wanted to say thank you so much for what you're doing and for having this program. I wanted to give you a prospect from my point of view. I am Chinese Hawaiian, born and raised in the islands, but I'm Kaneohe, no Kaneohe Mayo. Beautiful Kaneohe on Oahu. But I now live on the East Coast. I never really thought about my hyena for a very long time. It didn't, like you said, I didn't really want to be remembered for anything in particular. But then Gabriel, my first grandchild was born. My first grandchild, if you look at him, he is 7 years old now. He lives here in Columbus, Ohio, where I have bought a house so I can be close to him. He's 7 years old. If you look at him, he's blonde, blue-eyed. You cannot find Kanaka in that boy. You cannot find Pake. But let me tell you what, I'm going to stay here. I'm going to raise this boy because if I do not, then he will never know this side of him. He will never know.
That's right.
All the stories that I shared with my daughters as they grew, um, it seems that it doesn't matter to them. So if his mother, who is my daughter, um, had showed signs of really relating to our culture and remembering who she was, where she came from, I would have felt more comfortable because in all our lives, my husband and I have been married 46 years now. It was always our dream. You take the girl off the island, you're going to take her home. And the day that we retired, we were going back to the islands. And then this little blonde, blue eyed boy was born. And he's a game changer.
A game changer. This is
Game
Mōpuna.
You know that. Yeah.
Congratulations. You
Thank
know,
you.
Pele traveled well and she traveled fully because throughout her whole journey, she held in her arms her sister, Hiaki Kapolio Pele. She incubated this child throughout, her journey. So sometimes the trigger is outside of us. Sometimes it is a mo'opuna. Sometimes it's the person down the road is a strange child that you hanai. And interestingly, there is a magic between parents, grandparents, and children and grandchildren. So and I'm a grandparent of 4, and my whole world has opened up again. I get the same world I live in, but it is now more clear. We have Kanoelani back, Kanoelani, yay! And so tell us about thank you, Kai Michaels. And interestingly, the form may change, so this boy might be blonde and blue-eyed, but the essence is what you're keeping him attached to, which is his Pico connection to everything that is Hawaii. And that's it. That's it. Because we do have people with form and the essence is missing. So provide that essence. If that's what we can contribute, then why not contribute that essence? Yeah. Kanoelani, your haina.
I went haina before you guys went. I went Hawaii before I went haina, I guess. The wind blew on Molokai, Kalamai. Thank you, Auntie Kai, for sharing your manawa. I wish I was here to hear most of it. But thank you for holding it down. The haina. Whew. All right, 7 generations from now. What am I gonna leave? Let me express to you. I put in a chat earlier at Ramblings of a Kakawahie. That's my other me. That's my kinolao or my kupua form, or however you wanna call it. That is where I write my stories, and I leave that there for my children because one of the things my grandfather taught me how to do was to kilo. He trained me very well in kilo, so that was my job. So if we ever got lost anywhere, I knew how to get back. And that's all realms. And so what I did for my children was anywhere I traveled in this world, I left them things. So in my mo'olelo, huna na mea huna, and only for them to know, they'll read what I have written and they'll know where to find it. If you've ever watched National Treasures, I'm that kind of person. I love history and I love like exploring, and I love riddles. Riddles entice me. It gets my brain going, and so I left a lot of riddles for them and a lot of mo'olelo that wasn't obvious. We are deep and steep in kauna because I needed them to figure it out. So every day for the past, I've been in this house for 10 years, 11 years. I would stand in one spot and every morning I would kilo, and every morning had it. The writings included directional points. It included the names of pu'u. It included the names of ua. Everything that had to do with this ahupua'a, where the sun rose along Maui on the horizon, where the moon rose from Kamako down to Kalohi or to the channel. So I would leave them these stories in hopes that maybe not them, but my mo'opuna and the mo'opuna thereafter would read these mo'olelo and figure out where their kupuna was at that time. What happened? What was the weather like? Where was she standing? What did she see? Because that will soon be lost. Buildings will come up. Land will be shifted. So I leave these as ways of them having their own history, and do not believe all the history that others leave for you. Yeah, just believe mine. No, believe this history because this is the history in which you're gonna continue. And if I drop the ball anywhere, one of you will likely pick it up. And let me explain to you exactly where I dropped the ball, so you could figure out where to pick it up. You know, so these were the my moments of my life. The aha moments. Yeah, it was the failures, the experiences in the community, and the movements of even shame and successes. Like, I really truly believe that experiences are a part of intelligence. It's not just the knowing. It's not just I can read on book and know. I can go to Oli, Papa Oli every day and know. Like, when you can be in the spaces in which you share, then you start to feel and understand the experience that's happening. And I say that even with hula, I'm a hula person, so even as I dance or in ceremony, I'm not there. I know it sounds kind of funny, but I'm not there. I have spoken in old languages in the middle of ceremony with witnesses. We are not there. Our form is, you can see it, but our essence starts to take the place of the elements. It starts to take the place of the aqua. It starts to take place of all of these things, and the aina, even the aina itself. And so, you know, sharing those stories, I don't want my children to be afraid of who they are, because I had to question who I was. You know, Papa sat me down one day in my mid-20s when I started. These dreams were getting prominent. The things that I could see, do, and feel, and the messages that were coming across from 4,000 generations prior to me didn't make sense, and it did not match this world. And we had to talk about it. And I was very fortunate to have a Papa still alive, coherent, still could talk about those things to me. Not many of us have that. And you may feel that there might be something in you that's a little bit different, but that's your mana. So you have to find ways in which you do not have to shift from who you are, because who you are is, I know it's cliche, is enough, but it's real. It is absolutely 100% real. And I want to leave that for my children, my mo'opuna, because I may not be here to tell them that it's okay and what they're going through is normal, regardless of what society says. But all I can do is instill that in my children today in our talk stories as if it was nothing. And then leave these little hints in my writings that they'll soon pull out of the archives, and they'll go through and they'll know, you know, what season it was. Was this Lono season? Was it rainy season? Was it dry season? These were the birds that came out during this time. This is when their son, you know, came and puka out of Kamako. Like, don't know, because that's what I'm gonna leave for them. So that's the haina for me, is love me or hate me, you know. I will always be here. That's not really sassy.
And what we do know, that if it hasn't happened already, that there's going to be a grandchild, a great grandchild perhaps, that's going to be near identical to you, and that's going to really need to hear and read of her grandmother, so that they don't know that, so they know that they're not isolated. That, you know, and I think that's the thing about haina. sometimes we've come to the point where we don't value ourselves anymore, so that it's not valuable. You know, what we know, people might think, oh, it's too little to be of any value. But let me tell you, when you collect all of these little knowledge systems from your community, that's a lot of knowledge that people left behind. All the dances that we've inherited, it was because somebody decided to keep it alive. And some of those dances are beautiful classic ones, and some of them you just go, oh, okay, that's good for in-house training. You know, it's not glamorous, but it comes with ritual. It comes with certain clues that we need. So I think that's one of the things about storytelling, is it lets us hear our own values, our own worth. Because oftentimes if we're waiting to hear it from the community outside of our bodies, it may not happen in ways that are meaningful to us. So storytelling is about knowing your voice. And, you know, any good storyteller has to practice. Tell your story. You know, and oftentimes if we don't have a story, then we become very sour and bitter after those people that have a story. And we're always looking for the right and the wrong in the lives of other people. And I think that's, you know, and oftentimes I have to go and go, oh, you know, I come from a world where you fight them, you beef that. It's a physical. But now that I'm mature, I'm going to say, oh, they're the way they are because their story, you know, that it's their story. You know, that everybody has a story. And I find that even in academia, you have to deal with a lot of ego battles. And I found that once I begin to be kind to the fact that people might have stories and their stories may be underdeveloped, or maybe they've left the canoe, so their stories are not finished. You know, in Hawaii, we place a lot of value on finishing a cycle. You have to finish a cycle so you can begin another cycle. But, you know, our lifestyles these days, you can leave a lot of cycles open and exposed, and therefore you become very, very, the essence of who we are becomes very vulnerable. So, you know, if you have to leave because we are running out of time, please do know that, can you tell us how we can contact you? Should they want to, you know, some of the service, you have some platforms that is open to your community and you want to share them, or maybe some ways of they can contact you if they want to continue some of this sharing of experiences through storytelling. Can you share with us what those are?
Yeah, I apologize for this being so short. And PōMahina Designs, we don't only do clothing and you know, jewelry, and starting to get into la'au lapa'au on our website. But every day we drop what I call mana bombs. They're just basically truth bombs of similar things that people go through. And I do that. I've been doing that every day, every morning for the past, I don't know how many years. It's helped me. It was my catalyst to healing. And it became the catalyst for a lot of other people to find things that were relatable. But if you're ever interested, even if you just needed a pick me up or watch me do something kind of mental on there, feel free to jump on. But you can go, I put it in a chat at PōMahina Designs. And then email davis.kanoelani@gmail.com. We also work with single mothers or single fathers, single family homes. And we have a nonprofit called Ho'aka Mana, Striking with Intention, for our single families. So, as I was one single mother for a very long time with 4 daughters. So having to raise them was challenging. And if I could help somebody else's life be a little bit easier, I would love to offer that, because it was not easy. But yeah. Aw.
Wow. So the next time you come across, you know, an Instagram image of, you know, my PōMahina, and we're looking at the art, you know, we're saying, oh, do I like it? Or maybe I don't like it. Or I like that print, or maybe that color, I would like to see it. You know, as we're dealing with the form, do know in your heart that for a little while, you got to hear the story, that the essence of that form. And so, you know, and then I don't know if you know, but we're related through marriage, and we share mo'opunas. So, so it's nice we can be so close and yet not know each other. So first of all, I want to thank you for sharing. That's very big of you, and you're not a very big woman, but it's very big of you to share what you shared. That's what we need to hear, because the stuff we're reading sometimes don't reflect us, and we need to hear something closer to home. It builds us out of isolation to know that other people have similar journeys. And it even helps us to support those that have the bitter peoples in our family. And sometimes we marry the bitter ones, like, oh, the third bitter marriage, But, maybe storytelling can help us be a little bit more kind and empathetic. People are underdeveloped there. And so we're fighting their form, but it's their essence that perhaps we can contribute to. We're fighting the wrong fight. So help us grow each other's essence. We can put on as much hula kahiko clothes we like, but if that essence is missing, then we have an opportunity to build it. It's not the end of the story. We can build essence back into, all we need is the peva of that manini, just a little bit of that. Then we have a story that says, you just need a portion of the fish and you can reconstruct the whole fish. And that's what we do every day. We reconstruct from what was left us. So, the one thing that we all have in common is we're all going to croak one day. So let's begin strategizing what we're going to leave behind. Value your life, guys. Why exist if we're not going to value our life? Honor our breathing. Honor our ancestors. We're alive today because people made decisions. We're products of their decisions. Our job is to bring meaning to that life.
I want to share also, there is still synthesis of aloha. Synthesis of aloha exists.
Yeah.
And that comes generationally. And we have to, if we walk in this world not worrying about what other people think, and we walk in this world knowing that we walk in honor of our kupuna, I think that's way more precious. And that's the best way. You said fight. We're fighting the wrong fight, so we're gonna fight the good fight.
Yeah, we gotta fight. We gotta fight. So we love to fight. Just make it a good one and make it a win-win. In the support of another person's story, you support your own. In valuing your own story, you teach somebody to support their own story. You cannot share. If we descend from the canoe, everybody on that canoe that we came with us from wherever, we all had a strong story. There was no weak story on that canoe. Only strong people. We descend from that strength. We descend from that canoe. So let's grow it. We do get injured along the way. There are bumps and bruises, but we can heal. And it takes a community. So, develop your story. Know who you are, or develop. It's a long, that's a life journey. What is your voice? What is your value? That's the homework I have for you. I'm a professor, college professor. We always got to give homework. The next time you pass that mirror, stop and ask yourself, who am I? What's my voice? What do I bring special to this world? Every one of us has a special gift we bring to that world. And let's spend some time investigating what that is. Our children need us. Our families need us. We need us. We need ourselves. So I want to say thank you again to your grandmother. She got to be my hero, for a little while, and your grandfather, because it's so, and thank you for sharing that, because sometimes we want to share about all the, it's uncomfortable to share the truths, especially when they're conflicting. But, again, I cannot walk away from this discussion without realizing how just the words essence and form has meant so much. I know those words, I use it, but in this context, essence and form is beautiful. I love form. And sometimes that's all we inherit is form, but that's not the ha'ina. There's the essence, and we get the form. Our job is to bring in the essence. Sometimes we get the essence, we got to find a form. They need each other. So thank you very much. I want to just say the upcoming Mōkaulele is activism through art, indigenous identity and voice. And it's going to be November 18th. And this is with our friend Miliana Meyer. And so please join us for that. And, you know, again, somebody asked, is this only for Hawaiians? This is for indigenous, whether you identify with indigenous or not. Everyone has some kind of indigenous origins. And if this platform can help awaken people to the reclaimants of what that is, then please invite, share, invite big, invite deep. And, you know, if they're horrible, we can just mute them. So not a problem, you know, just invite them. I want to say mahalo to the all those Hawaiians in the university system who sacrifice and their journey into this white world of ours, the academia. They went in there and they begin to shift and form. They began to bring essence into a foreign form so that the form can now begin to reflect what we value. So to all the Hawaiians that were in the university system before us, your journey is continuing, and we're checking in every day because of your service, and we're growing it. So it's not the Ha'ina is continuing. Thank you to the Native Hawaiian Student Center at the University of Hawaii at Hilo, and Auntie Gail Makuakane London, who is the director of that. Many of us know her. And I want to say thank you to Iola Haloa Center for the Practice of Hawaiians Lifestyles at Hawaii Community College, Noel Tagab Cruz, who is the coordinator, and to all those other people there. I want to say thank you. Keep our stories alive, guys. And thank you again, Kanoelani. Yeah, what a beautiful moment, you know, and let's fight a good fight. Let's bring essence back. Let's support each other. See you and Mōkaulele again. Kanoelani, if you can stay on board. Gail, if you could stay on board. The rest of you, I'm going to say good night. Bye-bye. It's nighttime here.
Mahalo.
Aloha.